Hello and welcome to another episode of The Living Philosophy. Today I want to share an idea I've been having about industrialization and the future of slavery or of the lower classes. And I've been thinking about this because there's a growing middle class in China, and we're seeing China is creating a lot of infrastructure projects in Africa. And this kind of got me thinking about where things are going, because there's another trend that's happening where if you look at the Foxconn building in China, it's the building with the highest suicide rate in the world. They've actually put nets all around the first floor of this building so that when the workers jump off the top and they land on the nets, like they're trying to stop them from killing themselves. So incredibly dark. This is where all of our iPhones and a lot of our laptops, a lot of our technology is assembled. And obviously this is dark. This is dark as hell. But now those workers are building 1 million robots as well as assembling everything else and being unable to kill themselves. They're building an army of 1 million robots which will do the work for them. So these robots will automatically assemble. So they're building the thing that's going to put them out of work, and it seems unlikely that they will be getting the money from it. But anyway, that's kind of another trend that's going on. So you've got these two separate trends, growing middle class and also the robot army being developed. And this got me thinking about industrialization and how it works in patterns, because the standard narrative you hear now is that the West has taken advantage of the East with the sweatshops and buildings like Foxconn, and there's no doubt that we are the ones benefiting from it in a proximal sense. But I think that there's a greater thing going on here. If you look at the broader sweeps of history and you go back to the Industrial Revolution and you look at the poverty of the working class and the people working in coal mines and working incredibly long hours, or working in the mills, working in the factories, and kids working incredibly long hours and for incredibly little pay. And we kind of evolved out of that. I mean, it took time because again, to map over with spiral dynamics there, you've got the base of discipline. That blue is building up until the society gets rich enough that it can move to orange, and then that's moving into the middle class, and the materialistic consumerism starts to evolve out of that. And what happens is that at that point, well, here's an interesting aside, is that Marx came along with the development of communism at that point in the 19th century, or Marxism. Communism is kind of already around a little bit, I guess. And he comes around with this, and it's the working class to rise up and topple the bourgeoisie and the nobility, and to take power for themselves and to re-educate the masses so the state can wither away and we can still live in a fantastic state of communal bliss. And that comes along, and it's relevant at that point. That's the point at which a communist revolution can happen. But then by the 20th century, and I think actually it's got a part to play. Certainly socialism kind of drove the reason why communism as a whole wouldn't work. It made itself irrelevant in some sense. Not socialism, but communism as a transformative thing of culture. Because if you think about what happens is you get these trade union movements driven by socialism, driven by a thing of emphasizing workers' rights. And this ends up to giving workers higher and higher pay, getting standard wage. And so you see this middle class start to rise out of the kind of the ashes of industrialization. And that's kind of what we're seeing happen with China now. You've got this growing middle class, having China spent the last, 50 or 60 years, 60s, 70 years in this state of increasing industrialization. And we've outsourced our cheaper labor because now our workers are paid too much, and it's cheaper to pay workers over there and to ship it back over. And so it's this pattern of industrialization. So it took us, 200 years to get from, we'll say, 18th century up to 20th century. So it took us a couple of hundred years to fully move out of that state, from the start of industrialization up into becoming a developed middle class society, and then socialism kind of coming in and giving us all these benefits, certainly in Europe, of a sort of a social welfare support, and just all the amenities of a health system, and so many great things that come to us. And then you look at China, you look at Japan. China's a better example like that. The start of that industrialization, and it only took them 60 years now. Maybe it'll take them 100 years altogether to get to the point where we're at. The wealth in China is just increasing massively, and that middle class is expanding. And I don't think that an authoritarian system can last, and under those conditions of moving from blue to orange. Now they're gonna try with this social ranking system, and yeah, it's really interesting because it's becoming very 1984, and they're trying to keep things at blue while continuing to grow, and I just don't think it's sustainable. I just can't see how it'll happen. I think the Chinese youth growing up, the people who become the leaders of the party in 50 years, I don't think it could be sustained. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see. China is an anomaly in many ways, and maybe they will be able to do that. But as we're seeing that happen, as we're seeing that middle class grow, it's interesting. You can already see China looking ahead and seeing maybe that their own workforce might become too expensive at some point in the future. They're starting to build all these infrastructure projects in Africa. They're starting to develop Africa, and they're buying off their debt. So African countries that can't get a loan from the IMF, they're China just coming in and being like, here's some money, and we'll come back to you later. So China is kind of buying up Africa in this sense, and here's what I think is going to happen is that China's labor is going to get too expensive, or it's going to be cheaper for them to get things produced in Africa. So they're building this infrastructure so that Africa can start to do the work for them. So kind of like the West did with the East back when we had like these massive colonial empires. And now China is passing that buck of industrialization to Africa, and what it will seem like completely taking advantage of the Africans. It will seem like taking advantage of a people whose culture is at a lower level, where there's higher corruption. But that's just one view. I mean, that's the short-term view. That's the proximal view. There's no doubt that on many levels that's right, but inevitably over time those countries will develop, just as China has developed into a new superpower. And so industrialization, it seems like a furnace, a crucible that a civilization has to pass through, and it's at the expense of its poorer people. But long term, they're investing in their future kids, in their grandkids, in their great-great-grandkids. And those are the people who will be more and more developed as the industrialization grows and they move to higher levels of education. So I'm thinking, is this the pattern of industrialization? On the other hand, is Africa going to get industrialized now? And after that, South America. Is Africa going to reach industrialization with this other trend that's going on, which is robots? And the thing with the robots is that might just nip it in the bud. It might nip this whole trend in the bud, because China might just build the robots, the West might just build the robots. Africa doesn't get industrialized. They don't get exploited as much in this working sense, but they'll probably continue to get exploited in terms of resources and minerals and all that. So we're just going to take what we want from them without really raising them up at all, which industrialization ultimately, in the end, allows the people to rise themselves up. And maybe Africa could have taken less time, considering the West took 200 years, China took, we'll say it's 60 years so far, maybe 100 years altogether. Could Africa take even less? Or is that because of the foundations of a kind of a work ethic that was already there in China that is maybe lacking? Maybe there's a foundation that was in China that is lacking in Africa. Who's to say? Again, I'm just drawing on one example here, so we don't know how this would actually play out, but this could ultimately get nipped in the bud entirely by China building a load of robots, and then it's no longer industrialization in that sense, because now the industrialization is done. We just need to build more robots, and you don't need to outsource your labor to cheaper countries anymore, because you've outsourced the labor to robots who you don't have to pay anything. So it's an interesting kind of to see how this could potentially play out in the future. And I just wanted to throw those trends out in front of us, and just to see, I guess, more of a thought experiment to see where this is going. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'd love to hear from you down in the comments if you have anything to add, to amplify, to throw in there. And yeah, I shall see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.